Well, good morning, everyone. I guess almost good afternoon. I think we're the session between you and lunch, so we get that very much. My name is Jenni Murphy, and I'm going to introduce our guests and walk you through our session. Is this too loud? No? Okay. Warning, I do get excited sometimes and get louder, so just tell me if that's happening. This is session 15, so hopefully you're where you want to be, and if you're not, it's not personal if you need to get up and leave, so it's okay. This is a business process transformation supporting the people inside of the process. We have some session contributors, so I'm going to introduce them, and then we'll kind of rock and roll through this. So first is Brenda Fleming. She is the CIO for the Board of Equalization. Now, all of the bios are up on the website, but a couple things I wanted to highlight for you is that Brenda was appointed to the Board of Equalization in 2011. She actually started her career in 1987 with the state, so I'm pretty sure that must have been like a high school to work program.
I was 5.
Yeah, she was 5. In 1993, she went to the Legislative Data Center. She brought her own fan club. Can we see the BOE folks? Woo! Okay, and they're right front and center here.
And all of our partner agencies.
I first met Brenda actually probably early when you started at BOE, and I can tell you I was just immediately impressed with her energy, her caring, her drive, and enthusiasm. So we are very happy to know her at Sac State and to have her on the panel today. Our next panelist is Mike Sinor. I was like, oh, I never asked how to pronounce that last name. Mike Sinor. He is the assistant CIO with the city of Roseville. I actually just met Mike in person today. We've been on some calls, and he's been doing some work with Sac State, so we're happy to meet him today. He's actually been with the city of Roseville for 15 years, and we realized that we know a few common folks. And I'll go ahead and tell you, he's a bit of a prankster. Oh. And so is this computer.
Did Mike do that, Jenni?
Huh. Oh, crud. So, thanks, Mike. First off, he had someone text me that he had the flu and wouldn't make it today. And yeah, but he's here, clearly. And I heard the session before this, they wanted to start the Windows installation, and I guess we're going to finish it. So, my name is Jenni Murphy. I'm actually the Associate Dean at the College of Continuing Education. We're one of several colleges under the university, and happy to be here. We do a lot of work with state government and professional development, degree completers, and English language learners in our college. I also want to recognize Christine Irian. She's not up here with us, but Christine, can you give a wave? Yes, a nice parade wave. Thank you, Christine. Christine is actually the head and the heart and the hands behind all of our professional development and our contract services relating to the development of people. And I hope if you haven't met Christine, please introduce yourself. She's just fabulous to work with on any projects that you want to bring in-house or any sessions that you want to send folks to at Sac State. And then also session contributors will be you as the audience. That'll happen a couple ways, asking some questions, taking some notes, maybe tweeting out some, golden nuggets or some pictures, and then we might have you do one little interactive exercise. So just fair warning. So it's good that I printed out my slides this morning. I'm going to miss a few visuals for you, and hopefully we'll roll through this. And if this finishes, we'll look at the pictures. So the session overview today was really to talk about that important balance of people, processes, and technology. I certainly think that's probably not a new phrase or a new set of terminology for any of you in this room, but it is always really about striking that balance. We also want to talk about investing in people, because in that whole balance of people, processes, and technology, for us, obviously as an education institution, really investing in people, in their skills, and in building readiness for change and organizational leadership, that's very important. We'll talk a little bit about theory. We're going to have lessons learned from our panelists and some reflections about the people and how their focus in that whole model of people, processes, and technology, what their focus has been on the people. Are you guys good to go? Does that sound like what we planned? Okay, that's always good to check, right? I'm going to lead you through it, walk you through it. So first and foremost, I'm going to ask you guys as an audience to think real quickly. When we hear the word system, what do you think of? What is a system? Think for a moment. Now, how would you explain a system to a 5-year-old? How might you explain a system to your coworkers, your spouse? How might you describe a system at a cocktail party? Do you have some different images floating in your head yet? Yeah, okay, close your eyes. Work with me here. Close your eyes and envision what that model would look like if I could pull up that PowerPoint. What does a system look like? Think about that. So I actually did pull up several system models, and there's a variety out there. You can search on Google and say, models of system maps. I bet in every one of your organizations, you've got a variety of things that you've been exposed to in terms of what is a system. And really how a system is defined or how it's modeled out is very much grounded in where the theoretical underpinnings are, also your organizational context, and how anyone wants to describe that as a smaller system, a closed system, a series of interlocking systems, or a bigger perspective. So there are oftentimes some very common elements in systems. It's the inputs, the throughputs, and the outputs, very nice and tight and compact. Maybe some of the models for you, depending on what you do and how you do it, that sort of expands to, oh yay, just in time. Duh. Okay, so maybe this is that nice little tight linear model that some of you thought and is often used in training and education. And we're gonna start. God, I love my life. So maybe that was the mental model you had. Maybe you had an expanded version that kind of talked about the environment of which a system lives or how a system interconnects. Maybe for some of you, you actually went to a more nature point and you thought about an ecological system and trees and rivers running through and a big system like that with smaller subsystems like a little caterpillar who's an input and through metamorphosis becomes a butterfly to the output. So you see, systems exist all around us, and how we define that in that context is really part in our heads, part what we've trained, and part where we live and work. You might have thought of some scholars, and it's quite a handsome set of men that I pulled some pictures of, but I'll clearly keep those to myself right now. So we're all familiar with the scientific method. Yeah, how many people did 7th grade science fair, scientific method? Okay, so that was all well and good through history for a while. In the 1950s, it was really Ludwig von Bertalanffy who actually sort of debunked that scientific method in terms of systems theory. And he really introduced this idea of, he's had a biology background, of the interconnectedness of things. A few years later, still in the 50s, there was an electrical engineer named Lofty Zadek, and he really popularized this interconnection and this model and the linear processes of connections. Now, maybe not a surprise that in the 70s, it was a little bit more of a broad approach to system theories, and that's when really all of the context and the culture really started coming into the literature and the research and around those underpinnings that a system is not just a closed linear system, even if you have an open system. Systems are reactive and responsive to their environments and to their culture, and all of us know that the culture in our organization is really the end result of the people in our organization. So that's sort of that theoretical history of how we get to people being really critical in the process. Hopefully that there were some visualizations of those models of people, process, and technology, whatever that diagram in your head looks like, if it's triangles or circles overlapping or linear or things all entangled, but ultimately getting to the faces of the people that you work with and the faces of the people in your organization. So with that sort of background in place, what we've asked two of our partners to talk about today is a little bit about what they've done to invest in the people in their organizations as they've gone through transition. Before we get into some of the questions that we've prepared for them, we'll actually start by offering them the opportunity to talk about the organizational context and their culture and what they've been undertaking as leaders in their organization. So Brenda, we'll start with you if you want to talk with us about the Board of Equalization and some of your tasks and opportunities and context.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. I got a big mouth, so if it dies too, just in case. So the Board of Equalization is, as you know, a state agency. We're a tax revenue agency. We bring in about a third of California's budget. We do business taxes primarily, sales and use tax, special taxes, property taxes, and in that special taxes is things like alcohol and cigarettes, et cetera, et cetera. So we are a tax agency. I joined the Board of Equalization in 2011, like you mentioned, and we are in the process of going through a number of modernization activities, modernization initiatives. So the Board of Equalization is using some tax administration systems that were implemented, and I'm looking at a couple of people who've been here before, late 1990s timeframe. So they were specific to tax administration. If you think about the implementation of those systems at that time, it was going to be equal to how tax administration was occurring at the time, how California operated at the time, all of the issues that come with the ecosystem, if you will, of the requirements in that time frame. So those legacy systems have been, like most legacy systems are, they're still working, right? I mean, that's what legacy is all about. They work, but they were just built some time back. So we're at the point now where we're 20 years later, 20 years plus later, and it's time for us to modernize that, because what has not, what is for sure changing is we get new legislation on a regular basis, and so we needed to find a way to enhance our ability to not only administer taxation and a 21st century model, but create an organization that was 21st century. We also needed to deal with a system that allowed us to modernize without all those constraints of the older technology. So thus we embarked upon, hey, we've got to start modernizing and transforming this organization so that we're more contemporary. California has changed, as I mentioned, and the demographics of our state have changed. And so back in the 90s, for those of you who might recall that time frame, we weren't doing a lot. In fact, I tease people to say, think about the cell phones then versus now. You can see, you know, the big leap. But in the 90s, you know, the way that we administered and delivered services was significantly different. And so now we're in a mode of where much more of our tax administration activities are, you know, 24/7, they're online. So we're 24/7 versus back in the day, we were, like most organizations, businesses, where it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So we really thought, okay, we were there, we've got to go here. How do you begin to move forward with some transformation, and technology is a portion of that story. So there were a group of us hired in the 2011 timeframe. We came on board with the intent of providing some change innovations, some change leadership, just some different fresh eyes, you know, into the pond. And so when I came on board as a CIO, you know, like most, the first thing that I took a look at is what is our current state? You know, like anything else, you know, do the as is. What is our baseline? If I know the target of after meeting with our elected officials and getting a clear vision of where they wanted to go, I just wanted to see, okay, then where are we? So we can come up with a game plan. So like most in leadership, then you come up with your 100-day plan, and so et cetera, et cetera. There were three things that I focused on as a result of that analysis, and that was we needed to mature the organization. Because there were a lot of extraordinary, you know, processes, et cetera, and there was extraordinary people there, but they were still in a different time frame. So we needed to modernize, and I needed to look for a way to say, okay, how do we mature this organization? So if you are at a CMMI for those capability maturity model, if you're at a level 1, 2, or 3, it has an indication of what your capacity is in terms of quality, repeatability, et cetera. What we know is that as technology, you know, progresses and we move into big data, et cetera, there are more risks. So we needed to make sure, and my goal was to make sure that our capacity was allowing us to not only manage the $60 billion, but to mitigate risk around all the data that we're collecting. I'm looking at my data PhDs over there. So that was one of the things we focused on, organizational maturity. The other thing that we began to focus on is really just our organizational and our operational efficiencies. So again, it's part of our strategic objective, but we wanted to make sure that, you know, as a revenue generating agency, it's important for us, and as a government agency, it's important for us to get a good return on the investment. So if you're going to try to help make sure that we're contributing our third of the California's budget, how do we do that as efficiently as possible? The third thing that I focused on was the topic of the day, and that's the people. So what we concentrated on is, if we're going to modernize to new technology and take it from a generation, an era of 1990 and move it into 21st century, what do we need to do to make that happen? Who do I need? What is the current state of the talent? What kind of talent do you need to deal with? Again, back in the 90s, it wasn't so much online services or big data or data analytics or the information security, all those things that come with managing what we do. How do we make sure that the BOE's IT organization had that natural talent? So on a personal level, what was important to me, and just how I'm wired, it was important for me to make sure that anybody that I work with and around, and they're on the team, that we created a winning team. And it was very important to me to create an organization that was world-class. And so that became a part of the composite of our goals, to not only that we were technically ready, but that the quality and the caliber of the professionals were recognized, were applauded, et cetera. And so when I started to then move forward with a training and development plan for that, it incorporated all of that. So I wanted the organization to have an IT department that they were proud of. I wanted the IT department themselves to be proud to want to be a part of that organization, because then that lends itself to, you know, drawing other talent, et cetera. So there was a lot, you know, it sounds like just a basic training plan, but there are a number of components that are embedded in it. So we began to move forward with that, and early in 2000, or late 2011, early 2012 is when I reached out and basically just borrowed some things that, you know, we had done in all my other chapters of previous life, to look at, you know, different avenues of training. So we began to look at the first one, which was our leadership training. Because in my opinion, if you're going to move forward with change, you got to have some leaders, right? You've got to have team captains and people who can vision and who can articulate those visions, et cetera. So we began to focus on that, and so had an opportunity to work with Jenni and with Christine and a number of people there who we just kind of laid out. And I think the frame that we had at the time was an IT boot camp. And it was kind of leveraged on some things that we had done previously in the legislature in our time there, where we had a boot camp that we did for the developers. But what it allowed us to do is really sort of have a structure that just says, here are the components. Basically a matrix that says, here are the components of leadership and technical professionalism that we want to move forward with. So I think at the time we had probably 25, 30 people or so that we were pulling out small groups of people to create following the cohort model, where we said, let's create this leadership development. It wasn't the traditional leadership, although we borrowed some of the leadership that Sac State normally does, but it was tailored more to what the Board of Equalization's needs were. So we moved forward with that, and that became the team of leaders that were the thought leaders, but also those that were on the front end and still today are on the front of that bell curve, who are engaged in helping me to convey the vision and to be able to articulate that. So it's not just one voice, you know, promoting the message. So that's kind of how we started. Subsequent to that, you know, since 2011, we continue on our modernization journey, but then you start to drop down into the other sort of lanes, if you will, of training. And so there we're concentrating on complementing the leadership with ITIL training. So one of the big things that and I think that was revolutionary for the Board of Equalization, in my opinion, was we had always been considered a tax administration agency, and we got a new executive director about a year into my time there, and she came from Louisiana, and it was always referred to as the Department of Revenue. So we made a significant paradigm shift from a tax administration agency to a revenue agency. This may sound small, but it totally, if you look at life through a different lens, it's going to change your thinking and your behaviors, your actions, et cetera. So when we went to move there, it started to drive our priorities and our focuses differently. So service delivery objectives change for us, because if I am managing money that the state needs to keep things going, I'm going to manage that with a different kind of attention and focus than I am if I'm managing tax administration programs. So it allowed us to qualify ITIL a little bit differently. So we're still concentrating on that service delivery, but it's kind of packaged differently. We then followed it up with, and it's still ongoing, all of this is ongoing, with business, getting those business analysts trained. Back in the day, IT, and I've been in IT for 1,000 years, back in the day in IT, we were just a group in the back that just did whatever program needed us to do. And I think Mike and I talked about this before, we have to be different. All of you as IT have to be different. For those of you that are in IT, you have to think different. You have to be partners with your program areas and with business. So you've got to be able to think not just in terms of systems and technology and down in, you know, mainframe or servers or networks. We've got to have a vocabulary that helps us to support the business. So it was important for us to get a handle on that. So we're raising the competency and strengthening the competency of business analytic skills. We're supporting that by things like project management, a lot in data analytics. Clearly, we're moving into that space. So you don't, for us, again, for me, it was important for us not to be trailing all the time, but to try to be on the front end of that. So we're trying to get ahead of making sure that we've got competencies for the agency around big data, analytics, BI, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, there's the natural technical skill sets that, the various departments in the BOE's IT organization focuses on: development, tools, stacks, networking, et cetera. All of those are there, desktop management. Our next lane, if you will, since all of that's kind of current and active, going forward, what we're looking at now is, and it's kind of new to my organization, is it's a different kind of, maybe back in the day you would consider it soft skills, but it really is on decision making and our ability to, how do you really make decisions? How do you critically think? And that's a little bit of a different training model than the traditional training for data, for analytics, et cetera. It really is around, so how are we going to think about what we're doing and how do you make decisions? Because with modernization and with transformation and leadership, it really is about what are those decision-making styles and how do you efficiently, effectively get it. If we think about, if we all together had to make a decision about where we're going to lunch, it's going to be a minute, right? It's going to take time for us to figure out what we want to do. So, we think that, decision makers is just a natural talent and you're just born with it, but there really is systems and thinking and methodology and science to it. So what's important for me is to make sure that we're adding those other dimensions of our skill sets. There's probably more that we can talk about. I'll cut off for now because I think in the exchange we'll hear a little bit more. But I think I just summarized by saying I think what's important is with all the cool technology, and again, I've been in technology, my kids laugh at me, before there were PCs. So, which my son really has a problem with. He's like, Mom, nobody existed before there were PCs. But I did. So technology's fun and it's important. What you do for the program in terms of, as professionals, whatever services you deliver are important. But nothing happens without people. Without the system, to Jenny's point, without the system of who you are as a person and the system that's here is the best technology ever. And so it's very, very important for me to look at that as our natural talent and the most valuable resource that we have. And also on a personal level, there's nothing more important and valuable to me is to create an environment where people are thriving because they're looking at things differently and they're learning something new every day. And so if there's something new that you're refreshing the water in the pond, you're always going to be innovative and thinking and alert and engaged. So it's kind of part of the mantra, and I try to share that with this BUE table that's sitting here. They're all embarrassing me because they're sitting up front staring at me. But I think it's just important for you as you're moving forward in whatever your projects or initiatives are, think about the people. And sometimes we should start there instead of starting on the project and all the things that you want to accomplish. Make sure that you're putting in as a main ingredient your staff's and your team's capacity to get there. I applaud my team regularly because they are, in my opinion, a bunch of rock stars, and we're trying to create a fun environment, and training is a big part of what we do. So I hope I'm representing, these guys are like, really? But that's kind of how we started, and that's the context of our story.
Great, thanks, Brenda. Mike, you want to tell us what's going on up in Roseville? Wow, okay. There's more to come from Brenda, too.
So Roseville is a neighboring city to Sacramento.
You might need to get a little closer.
Around 130,000 in population. We're a full-service city. We support many services to our citizens, similar to most cities. Although we do have we are a little bit unique in that we have an electric utility. We have a power plant. We have obviously police and fire services, as well as parks, recreation, library. We have about 17 different departments, that our IT department supports. And I'm going to start my story around 2010, right around that time, about the same time you started yours. So, yeah. Around that time, the city was undergoing a dramatic change. There was a change. Of course, the economic downturn was causing some issues all over the world, or all over the state for sure. And we also had a turnover in leadership in the city, a new city manager, several new department heads, new leadership in the IT department as well. So when we started to assess what was going on as a leadership team in the IT department, what we found was that there were some issues. We had some issues. We had some concerns. There were a lot of turf wars between IT and other departments, turf wars within IT. We had a lot of silos that we're dealing with. We had a perception issue, some credibility issues within the IT department and our business partners. We had limited capabilities when it came to trying to innovate and do new things. We were really maintenance bound. Our focus was on operations and maintenance, and most of our time was spent supporting the many systems. There's over a couple hundred systems that we support citywide, and that's a lot for a medium-sized city, a staff of 40-ish IT folks. So yeah, we were struggling. I can remember one of my first meetings was called into the city manager's office to talk to the police and fire departments about decentralizing IT, and everybody wanted their own IT department at the time. So that was it was an interesting challenge. There were some good things going on, obviously. We realized right away that we had very dedicated employees that were doing a really good job. With their tasks and what they were assigned to do, and the city had a clear vision. We had a clear vision in IT. We had a clear vision with the city, a one city vision to improve collaboration, to improve performance, and also within IT to become more innovative and more nimble, more agile. So that vision for the future was there, but what we realized is we were missing some things. Missing key skill sets. Really, our team had been focused on maintenance and operations for so long. Many folks have been there for years and years, 15, 20, 25 years, and focused on supporting one system or two or three systems, and that's what they've done their entire career. A lot of programmers, a lot of coders. You talked about the folks in the back room. We had folks that were, basically spent all of their time sitting in their cubicle, and not interacting with our business partners, with our customers. So the skill sets we saw right away, that we needed to address the missing skill sets or shortcomings we saw were on our leadership skills. With our own team, leadership team, we needed to enhance those and improve those. Communication skill sets, collaboration skill sets, project management, and business analysis skill sets were all things that we really saw a huge need if we wanted to achieve our vision moving forward. So those are those soft skill sets, and we realized that we're going to be difficult to achieve overnight, so we started to put together a long-term plan to improve those, and that improve them really throughout the department in IT, but also improve them throughout the city. We didn't limit our focus to IT employees. We realized that for a medium-sized city that we can't deliver on large projects, and we can't deliver on innovation, on the promise of technology if we do everything internally in-house. We really realized we had to be flexible and collaborative, and really give up ownership of in a lot of areas, and also embrace the talent that we had throughout the city. So we realized we may have a project manager on an ERP project that's not in IT. We may have a business analyst on an enterprise asset management project that's in another department, and there's all kinds of models that can work to be successful, and we need to embrace those. So that's basically the context and where we started with the city.
Great, thank you. So Mike, let me ask you first, and so I know we all want to know what are the lessons learned, and we all have a tendency to always share the good things and not bring out the dirty laundry, but I will ask you to share some good things and some ahas, but can you also share with us maybe some of the yuck, some of the challenges, some of the problems?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely issues. Like I said, it's a process. Basically what we're trying to do is change the culture of the department, and the city at the same time was trying to change the culture of the city, and that's a marathon. And and it requires a lot of patience. It requires relentlessness. Some of the issues we ran into, it was difficult getting folks bought into the vision. That number one. Right, to communicate that vision and get the team bought into what we're trying to do, and explaining the why. You know, trying to, I think the leadership team struggled at first in explaining the why, why we're doing what we're doing, painting the picture of the vision where we needed to be. But I think we improved along the way and brought people in, and eventually got people on board with that vision. But there was resistance, you know, with any big change initiative. There's going to be resistance. We saw it along the way. We had folks with certain skill sets. They asked the question, why? You know, I'm doing a good job. I've supported this system for years. My customers love me. I've won all kinds of awards. Why do I need to do a different job? And that's a difficult question to answer. So yeah. Dealing with that resistance and really getting folks bought into the vision was the tough part, and some of the resistance was tough, you know. Did you make? You said you guys did some training and around some topics, and probably I think when we talked on the phone there was some skill-based training as well as leadership and all of that. Did you make training mandatory or optional or opt-in? How did you frame that for your organization? We started out making it mandatory. And that was, I would say that was one of the ahas, that we had folks that really did not want to be there. They didn't want to do a different job than they were doing. They didn't want to really look at they didn't want to initially invest in those, in skill sets that were not technical. So when we changed it up a little bit and made it more of an optional thing, and then expanded outside of IT and tried to invest in the folks that really were passionate about this stuff, it completely changed the dynamic. And all of a sudden, folks that were resistant at first started to change their mind a little bit. And so I don't know if you've ever been in a class that's mandatory, where 75%
How many people like to be told you have to go somewhere? Yeah, no one.
It only takes a few people who don't want to be there to really change the tone of any kind of training session. So I think it's really important for it to be voluntary in many, you know, to really reach the folks before they step into that training session and get them bought in before. Because if they're negative in that class, it changes the dynamic for everybody there, especially these types of training sessions.
Brenda, you were nodding. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, you know, like most organizations, you say change is hard. And people, and dealing with the resistance, you know, similar to Mike, BOE has a rich culture of people who have been there for a very long time, same thing. And again, as I mentioned, it's legacy systems, so the technology's been there since the late 90s, and, you know, and it's what I do every day. It's like any other habit. I've been doing the same thing, you know, maybe a little bit different, but same work. And so when you get new people coming into the organization, and and this is the little things that you start to see. If you've been there, somebody's been there for 20, 25, and we've got people over 30, 35 years. If you think about that life cycle, for those of us that are coming new, especially coming in a new CIO, there are people there who said, you're like my fourth, fifth, sixth CIO. And so you're yet another one coming in on the bus, hopping off, coming up with the new ideas, and we're supposed to go. And they were looking at me like, okay, and you've got way too much energy, you know. So just really, you know, we don't even know, you know, what to do with you. So there were those kinds of yucky moments. I mean, it's You know, we sit up here and think, oh yeah, it looks all easy, hard, but we probably, I'm sure I haven't talked to Mike about this, but we put in very long days. And a lot of it is, pushing and pulling and locking elbows to help people move to where you want to be. And so you got to think about, when you're thinking about that kind of change, and one of the things we talked about on the phone was that you think that your job as a CIO, and I'm sure you have this, you think your job as a CIO, and most people think the job of a CIO is an IT role. And it's not really. It provides IT services, but it's not really, I don't know about you, but I don't spend my time and most of my days thinking about technology. I spend most of my time resolving problems, trying to communicate and make decisions about how to drive people forward. And so in any part of my day, to help people get through that change, I'm changing hats because it depends on who you're talking to and what the issue is and what mountain you're attempting to overcome. So like you, a lot of the pushing that I have to do is really spending time in meetings where you're really having to, Sac State, be an educator, because you're trying to tell a story to help the business too see what you're trying to achieve, because we had some credibility issues. Oh, that IT department, it's what they do. We never get any services out of them. There's a lot of decentralization. So part of my job and the new role, the transformation, was to get people to trust us, that we were a new IT organization, that we were more customer services centric, that we appreciated the business and the program, and we wanted to lock elbows with them, to your point, and include them into the process. So there was a lot of that kind of, working together to try to get through those mountains.
So really on that, the changing role, can both of you maybe speak a little bit to that intersection between the technology and the IT and the business and the program and your customers and
the changing role for our staff and our folks. Yeah, I can do that a little bit. For a city like Roseville, we don't have the resources to have a huge IT shop. So we have very limited resources to really support services for a very diverse business, a set of businesses. So we're even more resource constrained than many organizations or agencies. So for us, we realized early on that we're not gonna be able to support the technical as much. That to be successful and to innovate, we have to move away from technical skill sets and move towards. So we tell people constantly, we need more project managers, we need more business analysts, we need more cross-functional team leaders, we need folks who can run meetings, who can who understand politics and how to move things forward and deal with bureaucracy. And the funny thing is, those skill sets aren't always common with the folks that are drawn to IT. So how do you get there? Well, that's what we found. So,
but you don't mean to disrespect the IT people in the room.
Know thyself. Know thyself.
So how do you get there? It's a focusing on training and focusing on providing the tool sets is one way, but we also have to be very creative and flexible and listen to the team and figure out what their needs are and how they think that they can get there, because if you just pick one strategy, it doesn't work. Yeah.
Brenda, you talked on the phone a little bit about sort of multi-strategies, but also being bilingual. Can you share some of that? Yeah,
and no, I don't speak any other real legitimate languages. But I think the key for the bilingual, and make sure that we are recording on the right thing, there is the need to speak IT. But to your point, there's always also a need to speak business. And it really is a good balance. Because when you are sitting, and you have to be bilingual and be able to translate that pretty quickly. Because we have an organization now, because almost everybody, again, unlike it was back in the 90s, the consumers now and the people that you provide IT services or services for in general are consumers of a lot of IT in their daily lives, right? And so I'd be curious, show of hands, how many people think because they program their DVR at home, thank you, and how come they, you know, can do their microwave or their phone, somehow think that they're now an IT person, right? So because I do my, you know, I did the Wizard at home and I upgraded my PC at home using the Wizard, and I totally know how to build a server. So I get it. So what happens now when we're working with program, they'll say, no, it should be as easy as what I did at home, right? Bill's nodding but it's not. So what we find now is we're having to do the translation and speak both languages to understand what they're wanting in business, but translate it to IT. But more importantly, listen to the IT people. And the thing that I've seen where it used to be back more top-down decision-making in IT. Now it's a lot of listening to the team in terms of what are those technology innovations and being able to apply it to, then how does that meet that business need? And being able to make those connections faster, I think, is the biggest thing that I've learned. We've got to get there faster with the connections of here's an idea or a business issue, how do we connect that? And we've got to be able to switch our hats and our languages back and forth. So I think about some of the projects we've been on where people who are strongly technical and they go in their holes and do the technology, but when they're in that forum with the customers, it really is, to your point, it's more of a business, politics, you know, there's all those other skill sets that come into play.
Great, thank you. So I'm getting the 5-minute signal, which means my tummy's grumbling too, so I know it's almost time for lunch. But I would like to maybe take 1 or 2 questions from the audience if we have some. Okay, so we're gonna go here first, and then we're gonna go back there to you, sir. Okay, BOE fan club.
Well, I was joking that I wouldn't ask any questions, but here we go.
You lost the bet dollar bet.
Yeah, we'll need to repeat his question so they pick it up.
This is for Mike, actually. So you talked about one city, and I know I've heard there's a one BOE initiative too, and a previous employer had a one initiative also. Mm-hmm. What does the one whatever have to do with your people focus? What does it mean in your organization?
In our organization,
oh, hang on a second. I just want to make sure that everybody heard the question. It was really that you'd heard Mike use the phrase one Roseville, one city, BOE, one BOE, or one organization, sort of one DNA. And what does that really mean?
At Roseville, and I'm sure others will relate to this, in the past it's been very department focused. So the department director, if asked, what's your number one team? What's your priority? It's his team, or her team. That's my focus. That's my priority. Not necessarily the city. The citizens of Roseville need to be the primary focus. That's what one city means to me. It means that we all rally around the same vision, which is improving the quality of life in Roseville and enhancing citizen engagement and making Roseville a great place to live. If our day-to-day work does not align with that, then something's off. So that's what one city to us means. That when we're in a turf war, are we, do we have that one city mindset, or do we care about our empire? So it's putting that aside, all of that other stuff aside, and focusing on the vision of the city.
For BOE, ditto. There were a lot of, because we've got over 30 tax programs, a lot of the functional activities were organized based upon those individual lanes. And so, a divided house is hard to stand up and keep things moving. And so we needed to be one to do the magnitude of transformation that we needed to go through. We needed to have one common vision. And so I think, if you think about a sports team, if you're going for the Olympic goal, regardless of the team, you're going for that one thing, and everybody has to be on the same page, running the same plays, et cetera. So it really was just integrating and building coalitions around the one. So that as we're moving forward, even though we're not perfectly in sync, it does allow more efficient progress.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that question. We'll take one more question from the back.
So my question is around the transformation process that you went through. Do you do it yourself in-house, or do you hire consultants?
They're going to rock, paper, scissors to see who answers.
So just a combination of both. There's a little bit of everything. Like I say, we work with Sac State on some to bring in some of that leadership. We do, for us, leverage vendor contracts. We've already got, vendor arrangements there, and so they bring in training and support. So there's some of that. There's some internal, a lot of our new training actually in a weird kind of way that's very subtle is that when you bring in new staff and that fresh perspective, a lot of times some of the training, the new learning, if you will, comes through just people coming in from new organizations. There's some where there's, brown bag sessions we've done, webinars, so it's a combination of a lot of things. I think the key is to have the plan so that they're integrated.
Yeah, ditto here as well. It's a combination, but there's one thing you can't outsource changing the culture in your organization.
Right.
That's not possible in my opinion. We did utilize a lot of help from contractors, consultants, Sac State. We have had help everywhere from many different places, but you can't outsource it.
Yeah,
you got to own it internally.
Yeah, the cultural thing is big, and I think just you could probably do more yourself. It just really, for us, it depends on how much time you have, right? And so our transformation has a certain, like anything else, it's got time boundaries on it. So it really depends on how fast you want to get through it. Also depends on your baseline. How healthy is your organization, and how ready is your organization for the change, and how fast can you get through the marathon?
This is great. That was an excellent question and a great question for us to end on, and a great thought. You can't outsource culture. Your people are part of your culture. Culture exists whether you craft it purposefully or just let it happen. So take ownership of that. I have one last interactive question. How many people are Sac State alum? Woo, Hornets in the house. Okay, so 1 in 22 citizens in Sacramento area are graduates of Sac State. We thank you. We're proud of you. Stop by our booth if you want to get a picture. We got a nice step and repeat, and we'll put you up on, Hornet Proud. We'll tweet that out. Thank you.